All right, so recently we got back from the Altered Marriage experience in the Dominican Republic, which was focused on intimacy in a relationship. This is just a 4-night, 5-day experience for a small group of couples, 6 to 10 couples, where we help these couples refresh, re-engage, reconnect again in their relationship. It's an amazing time. And during our stay in the Dominican, I sat down with sex therapist Debbie Wade, who I brought with me on this retreat to help teach some of the content. And I asked her about one of the areas that is the number one struggle for most couples in the area of sexual intimacy, and that's understanding both desire discrepancies and the different types of desire. So in this video, check out my interview with Debbie Wade talking about the number one struggle that couples have when it comes to sexual intimacy. All right, so one of the areas that a lot of couples seem to get stuck when it comes to sexual intimacy is in the area of desire. Right, yes. Where we're assuming, based on Hollywood, that everybody has this passionate, can't keep our hands off each other, initiating desire, where it's like we're going to see each other, we're going to go after it, and that should be what happens in marriage.
And then both parties are thinking about sex all the time.
Yeah, and if it doesn't happen, then something's wrong with us. But the reality is there are different types of desire in a relationship. 3 types of desire. We're really going to stick on 2, but explain the types of desire in relationship and why couples get stuck if they don't understand it.
Okay. So there's initiative desire, and that would be someone who, let's think of like desire kind of as appetite. So someone who feels hungry and they're hungry a lot, often, and they speak about it, and they always feel that appetite, and they could go eat just about any time. And they're kind of revved like that. So that would be someone who has initiative desire. That may be how they are about sex. They think about it a lot. They want to have it. Doesn't mean they want to have it too much or too often, but that, they're ready to initiate just about any time. It could be anywhere. And then there is a second type, which is more of a receptive desire. And receptive desire would be like, you're not really hungry. Your wife says, hey, you want to go eat? And you're like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Well, I'll go with you to go eat. But you go to the restaurant, you walk in, you start smelling the food, you see food being served, and it's like you're getting all the wafts of the flavors, and you're reminded,
I'm hungry now.
And then it's like, kind of my appetite finally showed up. I'm glad you brought me in. And that's what receptive desire is like. And both are really, really significant and important. And then we're not going to unpack it as much, but there is a resistive desire, that someone who is really resistant to wanting, thinking about sex, or I don't want to say an aversion to, but they're really, really reluctant to going there. And sometimes that can be in the relationship out of a protective reason, maybe, something that's going on, or it could be due to past trauma or just some really old negative scripts about sex that really just doesn't let the body ever feel like having sex is okay. The initiative desire and the receptive desire are the ones that most couple experience conflict in.
And the problem is only about 5% of couples do both have initiative.
Yes.
Which is what we see everywhere, which is what is communicated as the norm.
Right.
But that's rare for couples.
It is real rare for couples. I mean, think of that. 5% of anything seems like really, really rare.
But that's all we see.
That's
what's movies, that's what friends post, that's often the dating experience, right? Because everything's new and exciting.
Right.
Seems like everybody's initiative.
Right. And unfortunately, even some through the Christian messages and teaching suggests that if the husband is wanting and he's desirous, then the wife is supposed to be. I mean, that's even kind of some of the teaching in the church, and it's a misteaching. But most couples don't understand this, so you can understand where there can be a lot of conflict. And in all couples, there is a higher desire person and a lower desire person. And what can make it even more complicated is not always is the higher desire person the initiative desire person.
So I'm higher desire, but I'm receptive. So I'm horny, but I'm just waiting for you to make the first move.
Right, which I find that some in women, that many women they may have the higher desire, but they've been given all the messages that they're not supposed to initiate. And so they've been kind of given this idea that it's even bad for me to initiate, or I'm supposed to let my husband lead so I can't be the initiator.
Sure.
But it really is in their want to initiate. And so I think it's so helpful for couples to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to know that there's nothing wrong with having lower desire, nor nothing wrong having higher desire. What ends up happening with couples that causes the conflict is sometimes whoever has the higher desire makes the person with the lower desire feel like something's wrong with them and they need to be fixed. Mm-hmm. They need to be fixed so their desire matches mine. Or the lower desire person may kind of almost pervert the higher desire. You just want sex too much and too often, and something's wrong with you. We need to get you fixed. And so we start doing that, making attributions to the way you are is not okay. Mm-hmm. And when we make those attributions, they're usually not kind. And so we end up with these negative feelings toward one another that shows up in the bedroom, that now we have negative feelings toward sex.
So how would you instruct a couple to start the communication about this? Like, are you receptive versus initiating? Or say there's a couple where they're both receptive. And if they're both waiting and nobody's initiating, how do couples like that set up their relationship in a way that sex will actually be present? Because otherwise it's like, well, I've been waiting for you for 4 years and you've been waiting for me. And if you start, I'm willing. But you never started, so I never started. Yeah. So how would you instruct couples to begin that conversation around, I'm not initiating, but I'm willing?
Right. I kind of laugh at that because you and I have talked about this before, and I just always think of the Walt Disney movie Jungle Book, where the two vultures are sitting. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? That's like two receptive persons. Is we're willing to do something, but we're just waiting for the other one to initiate what it's going to be. And so sometimes I think what's helpful to think of when we're receptive, we need to think more of letting decision lead and not desire. If we're waiting for desire to show up and desire to lead, we could sit a long time. But if we make that decision out of willingness instead of want to, that can be real helpful. I think it can be helpful for two receptive parties that they're willing to schedule sex and get on a routine of whatever the frequency would be, whether they decide once a week or maybe twice a week or 3 times a month. That's what we're going to shoot for, and we're going to have it scheduled so we both know to kind of anticipate it. Because anticipation can be real helpful in sex.
Yeah.
For the couples that are the high desire and low desire, I'm going to use 2 words that I think are important, really dealing with all sort of sexual experiences and really life in general, but acceptance and empowerment. And I think there's things that we have to, one, accept about ourselves, and we have to accept about our spouse. When we accept our spouse that he or she does have the higher desire, or he or she does have the lower desire. And I want to know more about that. I want to step into having empathy, accept that I'm not going to try to change them. I'm going to accept that and have an empathy to gaining understanding.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then empowerment is that part of what are we empowered to do to change things? And I think for us, if we're the higher desire, we have to look at, wow, I'm empowered to change some things about me, and I'm going to have to look at self-discipline. But it's also, what am I willing to bring to my spouse to say what might be missing in between our relationship that I might need to work on me, that might allow you to desire sex with me more often. And that's a real vulnerable stance, but it's an empowering stance. Or I don't want to be in this weight of, well, I'm not going to initiate until you're ready. Can you let me know in certain ways that is a good day for me to initiate? And all of this requires a dialogue.
Sure.
And so I think a huge part of dealing with any of our sexual issues is learning to have dialogue and communication about sex.
Absolutely. So there you go. Part of the problem many couples are having are differences in desire and differences in initiating versus receptive desire. But a lot of couples are a lot closer than they think they are, just because they don't understand the dynamics of this and they don't have the language for it. So I would say start a conversation around this language and with your spouse and see if you guys may be a little closer than what you think you might be when it comes to the sexual relationship.